Snowflakes drifted like pale embers through the foredawn murk, settling upon the blackened ramparts of Castle Black and softening every hard edge in ghost-white hush. The chill tasted of storm and old sorcery, tingling on Jon Snow's tongue as he paced the parapet above the courtyard. Ghost padded at his heels, crimson eyes mirroring the dim red frieze of sunrise still buried beneath the horizon. Somewhere far below their lonely height, the brothers of the Night's Watch stirred in their cloaks and mail, stamping boots, cursing frost, preparing another day destined to feel like the day before. Jon listened, not for the creak of winch or gate, not for the distant crunch of mammoths in the wildling camp beyond the wall, but for a sound older than stone. The call of a horn that, if the old songs were true, would shake ice and fate alike. Those songs had haunted him in restless dozes through the past fortnight, twisting with the memory of Ygritte's laugh, with the taste of mead Stannis had pressed into his palm, with the dire urgency of raven feathers. They told of Joramun's horn, the horn of winter, deep-sung instrument of ruin. Lightfoot wildlings murmured that it had been found, then sworn lost, then found again. Each rumor drifted southward like sparks on a cold wind, and each spark set another worry ablaze inside Jon's chest. He paused at the crenels and peered east along the impossibly long line of ice stretching crimson blue into pre-dawn gloom. The wall was quiet, always quiet, yet every stone seemed to thrum tonight, as though some slumbering heart beneath it prepared to beat. Behind him, boots clacked. Ser Dennis Mallister appeared, silver mustache rhymed, breath white in the rising light. "My Lord Commander," he said softly, voice pitched low as if sound alone might break the world. The builders report a tremor felt in their tower. Only a tremor, they claim. But you should know. Jon inclined his head. I felt it. So did Ghost. The dire wolf gave a faint huff as if in answer, ears pricking northward. Mallister's gloved hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. Could it be the horn? Jon wanted to dismiss the notion with a wry half-smile. Instead, he found himself gazing again across the ice. Could be rumor, could be earth settling, could be worse. He left the parapet and descended the outer stair, Ghost gliding silent beside him. Dawn bled slowly through high cirrostratus, painting the courtyard in amber and rust. Brothers walked its length like sleepwalkers, voices hushed. Jon sensed a contained panic in every lowered whisper, every guarded glance, as though the whole castle had woken from the same nightmare. And perhaps it had. He crossed to the rookery and pushed through the heavy door. Inside, crows rustled and croaked, feathers shuffling in twig cages. Bowen Marsh stood by the fire pit, sleeves rolled. "Another letter," Marsh said, passing a roll of cracked parchment. "From Eastwatch. Cotter Pike worries about strange lights on the Milkwater. He wants more men." Jon skimmed the crabbed hand. Lights dancing green and blue above the river mouth. Shapes moving beneath thin ice. The letter smelled of sea brine, as though it had traveled half dead. He thought of Sam digging in dusty vaults at the Citadel, poring over every scrap that spoke of the long night. "We have no spare men," Jon murmured, but inside he was already writing another order, already redrawing lines that could not hold. A shout rose from the yard below, sharp, terrified. Birds shrilled in answer, flapping against wicker as the rookery floor quivered. The tremor arrived like a wave striking from beneath, lifting the flagstones an inch before dropping them with a dull boom. Jon lurched, caught himself on the wall. The ravens screamed. Outside, horns brayed. Not the deep triple call that signaled White Walkers, nor the single note for brothers returning, but a confused discord of war horns from men who had never expected to use them again. Jon rushed back into the courtyard. The ground itself seemed to sway, and fine dust drifted from the tower eaves. Builders scrambled from doorways. "The ice?" one gasped, face bone-white beneath frost-rimed beard. "The ice is singing!" Jon did not ask. He vaulted into the tunnel beneath the wall, boots skidding across frost. Ghost tore ahead, paws thudding. Within that cavernous throat the world boomed. Ice groaned like an old god rolling in its tomb. Frost fell in curtains from the high ceiling. The air tasted of cold iron and winter roses. They burst onto the northern side just as the first great crack split the horizon with the sound of worlds colliding. Jon's breath caught. A fissure jagged across the wall's face, wide as a castle gate and racing upward faster than sight. Ice sheared, slabs the size of keeps plunging with a roar that drowned every horn, every scream. Wind tore outward, an exhalation of 10,000 winters, driving men and wolves to their knees. Atop a distant ridge, silhouettes appeared. Ragged figures clutching torches, their hair whipped in demon winds. One figure hoisted a black spiraled horn longer than any man, carved with glyphs that pulsed with inner light. He blew again. The note was a mournful cathedral bell that carried leagues and centuries. It froze hearts, but it shattered ice. With each blast, another span of the wall collapsed. Ghost howled. Jon tasted copper, realized his nose bled. South of the breach, ice knuckled outward, folding like parchment before flame. The section guarding the King's Road trembled, buckled. Men on the south side, runners, hunters, a patrol from Queensgate, stood transfixed as the wall came down in avalanches of blue glass. The torrent crashed across the King's Road, burying wagons, horses, everything beneath a mountain of shards. A plume of shimmering frost rolled south, swallowing trees until even the green beyond the gift glimmered white. When the thunder ceased, silence returned, terrible and total. Only the moan of fresh wind slid through the gap where once the wall had towered 700 feet. Jon rose, knees numb, and stared across ruin at the wild horizon. Ghost pressed against his thigh, hackles crowning. Shapes stirred in the timberline. Gaunt, pallid, eyes burning pale sapphire. Others, myriad, stepping into dawn. They did not charge, they waited, as if surprised by their own victory, or as if bound to some command yet unspoken. Jon remembered Sam's shaking voice recounting the cold shade that stalked him beyond the fist. He remembered thrusting dragonglass into icy ribs, watching a legend die. But this was no lone walker. This was an army that had waited 8 millennia for the wall to fall. Boots crunched behind him, dolorous Ed, breath ragged. "If this is a dream," Ed rasped, "I'd like to wake now, preferably warm and drunk." Jon's mind raced. The brothers south of the breach, scattered forts from Greyguard to Westwatch, were cut off behind a wall of fallen ice. More, the 7 kingdoms lay unprepared, armies still licking wounds from wars of roses and dragons. Ravens might fly, but men could not ride through mountains of ice. Not in time. The south was isolated, left to pray the watch could stand alone. "Form ranks," Jon said. His voice came firm, but distant, as if he were speaking through another man's mouth. "Archers on the ridge, dragonglass for every spear, light every trench." Ed's eyes flicked to the host stirring amidst the trees. "And if that fails? Then we hold the line with fire and faith," Jon answered. "Or we die hard enough to buy the living time." He turned toward Castle Black. Already brothers hurried along the walkway, carrying barrels of obsidian, bags of oil. Jon saw fear but also resolve. These were men who had stood atop the world's edge all their lives. They would not kneel now. He climbed the switchback stair 2 steps at a time, lungs burning. Above, the sky bled pink over broken ice. Crows wheeled, scattering. On the courtyard flagstones, Ser Dennis and Bowen Marsh argued over formations. Jon strode between them, ordering one to man the scorpions, the other to flood the lower tunnels with pitch. He found Satin arming recruits with dragonglass daggers, his soft hands shaking only slightly. He clasped Satin's shoulder. "You'll do well," Jon said. When Jon reached the top of the King's Tower, he paused to gather breath. From this height, the ruins stretched vast, a canyon of fractured frost glowing under newborn sun. Beyond, endless forest bristled dark as iron. And within that wood, white shadows shifted. A raven landed on the rail, feathers fluffed. Its eyes held glints of savage intelligence. Jon remembered the old tales. Ravens were children of the old gods, watchers for the greenseers. He leaned close. "Fly south," he whispered. Tell them the wall is lost." The bird croaked and leapt, winging over the breach toward a sky that seemed suddenly too small. Night fell early, ushered by black clouds and gales that hurled broken ice through the gates. Fires climbed in trenches, painting melted streaks upon snow. The watch stood arrayed, ragged lines of black cloaks snapping in white wind. Jon walked their front with Longclaw uncloaked, its pale blade catching sparks. He spoke little. The Brotherhood knew their duty. Each man's breath steamed into darkness, carried east by swirling gusts toward the silent host now clearer beneath the moon. A glittering river of pale armor, skeletal horses, dead giants pressing behind rows of others whose swords gleamed glass blue. The first assault came swift and silent. Wights cascaded down the slope like insects, jaws clacking, eyes dull. Arrows fell. Bodies stumbled, rose again, climbed over one another. Scorpions hurled iron bolts that pinned clusters together in grotesque knots. Jon fought on the ridge, Longclaw severing limbs that twitched after parting. To his right, PYP loosed shafts until his quiver emptied. To his left, Gren swung a warhammer borrowed from the armory, each strike shattering bone with sickening crunch. Dragonglass shattered with each kill, shards scattering black as midnight snow. Brothers bent to gather, hands bleeding, for more must be stabbed, always more. They fought until moon set and ice mist rolled thick enough to smother torches. Through that fog, the White Walkers advanced, tall as kings, armored in crystal so thin it shimmered like water. Their swords sang a music of deep winter, notes that cut flesh without touching. Where they strode, fires died. Jon met one on the collapsed parapet where once the elevator's wheel had turned. The walker's eyes burned cold flame. Its mouth bore neither scorn nor mercy. It raised its sword thin, deadly. Jon braced, knowing mortal steel would shatter. Ghost lunged first, jaw clamping on brittle armor, wrenching. Frost plumed. Jon dashed forward and slashed with dragonglass dagger in a reverse grip. Obsidian bit. The walker convulsed, keening like glass under strain. It burst into swirling snow, leaving only rune-etched armor clattering empty to stone. Jon staggered, blood freezing on his cheek. Ghost whined. A shallow cut sliced his flank. Jon pressed a hand to the direwolf's fur, muttering wordless comfort, then rose again. Dawn stained the east a wan violet. They had held one night, yet beyond the carcasses of 1,000 wights, new ranks formed, endless, tireless. Behind them loomed shapes ancient and grotesque. Pale spiders big as hounds, lumbering bears of ice, worse things glimpsed only in the corner of eye. The wall had fallen, winter itself marched free. At sunrise, ravens returned. One dipped low, a scroll tied to leg. Jon caught it with numb fingers. Stannis Baratheon had read the fires on the snowfields outside Winterfell. He would march north at once, but the king's host lay trapped behind rivers of shattered ice. Hold, the note commanded in curt Baratheon hand, or burn every tree in the north. Hold. Jon crushed the parchment. Hold against eternity. He looked at his brothers. Fewer now, soot-blackened, eyes hollow. They did not flinch when another horn blast echoed across the wastes. The horn of winter called a second dawn, and the wall's western flank cracked anew, raining shards upon Icemark. By the third day, Castle Black resembled a smoldering cairn. Courtyard fires belched oily smoke. Brothers fought atop makeshift ramparts of fallen ice, digging trenches through rubble where scalding pitch could be poured upon advancing dead. The wildlings camped beyond the wall. Those who had sworn fealty to Jon's mercy months ago surged to aid the watch, hurling spears from mammoth backs, singing battle chants to forgotten gods. Tormund Giantsbane laughed even as an ice wolf tore flesh from his shoulder. He fashioned the beast's skull into a helm and wore it the next charge. When the fourth night came, the Night's Watch stood circle-tight around the weirwood in the haunted grove, the last heart of warmth within a realm of frozen death. The tree's red leaves fluttered like thousands of wounded hands. Jon knelt beneath its face, pressing his palm to the carved eyes. He felt old sap sticky beneath bark. He felt a presence older than kingdoms. "I am the sword in the darkness," he whispered. "But darkness grows. Show me the path." A chill deeper than winter flooded his bones. In the black behind his eyelids, visions unrolled. The wall a jagged scar of ruin, its gaps blossoming with pale roses of ice. Winterfell's towers burning blue, banners torn. A she-wolf howling at a hard bright moon. A girl with half a face abloom in frost, stepping through broken gates with a flaming sword. And south beyond iced rivers, a red woman kneeling before a horned shadow, begging for dawn. Jon recoiled, breath ragged. The tree's eyes wept red sap that smoked in air. Ghost growled, pressing close. He rose as horns sounded yet again. Watch horns this time, summoning all to the curtain of shattered ice that had become their barricade. The dead advanced, vaster than before, led by a walker crowned in spires of rime. Its gaze fixed upon Jon across the battlefield, as though recognition passed between them. Jon lifted Longclaw. Frozen sunlight shimmered upon its cerulean ripples. Around him, black brothers and wildling warriors formed a ragged shield, their breath one cloud. The horn's final note dwindled. Silence pressed. Snowflakes paused mid-air, suspended by a power that made air itself forget how to move. Then the walker's blade came up, catching dawn. A single gesture and the dead surged. Jon charged to meet them, Ghost at his side, living brothers rumbling primal war cries. Behind, the horn of winter boomed once more, shattering another great span of the wall far to the west, sealing the south behind an impassable field of ice and forever changing the geometry of the world. They had fought for 3 days and would fight 10 more if need be, but in that instant Jon Snow understood. The wall was gone, and with it the fragile tether uniting north and south. The realm of kneeling lords and painted shields lay cut away, abandoned behind cliffs of ice. Here, upon the jagged edge of what remained, stood the last defense of the living, an island of flame amid a devouring ocean of night. Jon mouthed silent prayer to nameless gods, then hurled himself forward into the tide. The battle that followed would be remembered in 100 songs, sung by throats yet unborn, if any survived to sing. But that dawn, there were no singers, only steel and snow and the mournful echo of a horn that would not stop sounding until every secret buried in ice was loosed upon the world. Whispers of the old gods rasped through the shattered groves as the fourth night bled into a dawn of iron-gray light. Snow skirled in uneasy spirals, never landing, as though the air itself recoiled from the ruin strewn across the foothills of the wall. Frost-scabbed corpses carpeted the slopes north of Castle Black. Men of the Watch, spear-wives from Tormund's ragged host, red-bearded thens, gaunt white stiff and broken where dragonglass or fire had undone the dark magic binding them. They lay in grotesque embraces, black and brown and ice-white, while dire ravens wheeled overhead, their croaks swallowed by a hush so deep it rang within the skull. In the short hours since first light, Jon Snow had commanded every living hand to scavenge what could still aid a defense. Half-burnt torches, oil-soaked cloaks, arrows stripped from frozen quivers, hafts snapped from ruined spears only to be lashed to points of razor obsidian. But the brothers were fewer than ever, the wildlings fewer still, and the wall, no, the thing that had once been the wall, loomed behind them in a blunted arc of broken ice, impenetrable to the south yet useless as shield to the north. Jon stood upon that ragged escarp of blue stone, cloak whipping like a tattered banner, Ghost pressed against his left thigh. The direwolf's flanks rose and fell in silent growls. Every sense within the beast strained toward the dark timber beyond the ruin, where the dead mustering at dawn had melted once more into the trees. They would return at dusk or sooner, should their icy liege command. Jon felt certain of it. The White Walkers had harvested enough corpses for a new night's assault. Now they sharpened it into terror. He glanced sideways at Tormund Giantsbane limping up the slope, left arm bound in linen crusted dark with blood. The wildling's wolf-skull helm had been discarded. In its place he wore nothing but a tangled flame of hair whipped lank by wind and sweat. He squinted at the horizon, hawked phlegm flecked red. Quiet as a baby's arse after the first fart. He muttered, uneasy. Never trust that. Jon's fingers flexed around Longclaw's leathern grip. They know our fire wanes. Each hour without attack is a wound they salve with cold. And our bellies rumble. Tormund's broad hand tapped the haft of a stolen crowspear. We butchered the last pig 3 days gone. I've got men eyeing horseflesh, and the horses look ready to vote for it. We send foragers south of the icefall, Jon said. There's game in the gift yet, if they can climb the broken shards. Tormund arched a brow. Aye, and if shadows don't snatch them first. The boys you sent yesterday never came back. A gust cut between them, rippling cloaks. Jon tasted salt. Strange that sea wind should reach so far from Eastwatch. It carried distant cries of gulls, unless the sound were only memory. We cannot starve, he replied. Not before the war truly begins. Tormund's laughter burst sharp and incredulous. Boy, what in all the burning hells do you call this? If not war? Jon had no answer that would matter. He felt the weight of unseen eyes in the forest, and beyond those, the gaze of something vast and patient that did not need eyes. He turned away. Rally your spears. Tonight we light every brazier on the ridge. Let them see fire. And when the oil runs dry, then we burn the dead again. Jon descended the slope, boots sparking chips from the ice. Ghost followed, silent as moonshadow. Below the king's tower, the courtyard had become a warren of hastily pitched hides, stacked barrels, and field forges blown day and night by apprentices who had once mended horseshoes in Mole's town. Sparks drifted like fireflies above anvils where bent swords were straightened, rust knocked from axes, nails hammered into ragged wooden shields. Sisters Adana and Val fed kettles of thin barley porridge beside a spit turning grimly with crow meat. Birds shot from the rookery cages when grain stores ran out. A sickly smell clung to the steam, masking rot in the larders. Jon passed between leaning ranks of half-armored men and women, all hollow-eyed, all moving as if in a fever dream. Ut still moving. He nodded to Gren kneading oakum and wax into the seams of a makeshift battering spear. Gren managed a weary grin. Nearby, Dolorous Ed ticked names onto a slate. Living, wounded, buried, burned. He looked up long enough to quip. If the dead drag me off tonight, Lord Snow, scratch a smile upon the stone. Might be the last joke the world gets. Jon clasped his shoulder. Hold a quill for me tomorrow, Ed. I'll carve it myself. He ducked into the long hall once called the King's Tower Common Room. Fire crackled in a brazier at the center where a heavy table lay strewn with maps. Paper edges singed by stray embers curled like autumn leaves. Bowen Marsh hunched over them, cheeks sunken to sharp angles, hair plastered sweat wet. Ser Dennis Mal Lister stood opposite, face a mask of patrician calm though his gauntlets trembled faintly. Between them knelt Satin and 2 children of the free folk, chalking symbols across rough sketches of the fort's new perimeter. Marsh straightened upon Jon's entry. You sent foragers again, he accused without greeting. For answered, for Lord Commander, out of 200 souls. 600 at the start, Ser Dennis added, gaze regretful. Less than half remain able to stand. And what would you have me do? Jon asked. His voice sounded older than his years. Starve in place? Tell men to fight on an empty stomach and freeze besides. No, Marsh said. I would have you hold them here where fires burn and walls still stand, such as they are. Every man lost outside these remnants weakens the line. And if the line breaks because bellies gnaw at spines? Jon shook his head. We forage. Silence hung thick. Satin kept his eyes on the chalk, scribbling small runes denoting oil stores. Marsh wiped palms on his jerkin. Then double the escort, he muttered at last. Triple, Ser Dennis said coldly. I will not see more watchmen die alone in the snow. He rested a mailed finger upon a mark east of the collapsed switchback stair. Dig trenches here and here. If we anchor iron stakes across the breach, we can slow the next rush. We have 60 pikes, half with cracked shafts, Satin murmured. But I can salvage iron from the fallen gate. Do it. Jon pulled off his gloves, spread calloused hands over the brazier. Heat pricked already blistered skin. He willed it deeper, to thaw the frost that had grown behind his ribs. When dusk falls, light signal fires on the western ridge, he said. If Eastwatch lives, they may still see us. A shriek cut the hall. Men flinched, hands leaping to hilts, but it was only a raven plunged from the roof hole, circling once before clawing onto the map table. Its left wing ended in a ragged stump of bone. Feathers fell like black petals. Bowen Marsh cursed under breath. The bird croaked a single word. Fire. John stared. Ravens were taught simple calls: food, foe, snow. But this one's tone carried urgency beyond parroting. Ghost's hackles rose outside the doorway. John unrolled fresh parchment from a coil at his hip and dipped quill in lampblack. With swift strokes, he wrote 2 lines. Wall fallen, castle black holding. Need dragonglass, need fire. He tied the scroll to the raven's good leg, stroked its sooty neck. Fly, he told it. Eastwatch, if you still remember. The bird flapped once, twice, and soared back into the iron sky through the ruined roof. Satin exhaled. If it reaches them, it will. John forced conviction he did not feel. The old gods guard their messages. He glanced at Marsh, at Mallister. Prepare the men. By sundown, every brazier on the ridge roared amber against rising dark. Flames leapt in stone troughs along the inner rampart and in iron cages hoisted upon broken catapults. Barrels of pitch, prized from storerooms meant for siege engines that would never march south, were arrayed beside heaps of green pine ready to drink oil. Snow melted in shallow lakes that hissed where sparks fell. John addressed the assembled defenders in the muddy expanse that had once been Castle Black's courtyard proper. He stood upon overturned mead barrels, cloak thrown back, long claw point down like a banner staff, faces upturned toward him. Some caked thick with soot, others raw from windburn, some scarred with half-healed cuts that would weep anew beneath helmets. Wildlings mingled with sworn brothers, then alongside builder, spear wife beside courser, all wearing the same fear though each nothing alike. He spoke without flourish. The horn of winter shattered our wall, he said. It cannot shatter our will unless we yield it willingly. You have fought 4 nights and lived. That alone the songs will scarcely believe. But songs do not matter, living does. Hold your line tonight and we give the realm a chance to ready. Break, and the dead will sweep unopposed across the gift, through Queen's Road and into every hearth south of the neck. He swept gaze from flint-eyed free folk to black-clad brothers. We hold for them, but we also hold for ourselves, because though winter claims many lives, it does not claim who we are. His throat closed on thought of Maester Eamon's tales. Love is the death of duty, but duty can be love too. You are the shield that guards the realms of men, he finished softly. Guard it still. No rousing cheer rose. Better. Instead the host answered with grim clatter of weapon on shield, thud of spear haft against earth. Acceptance, not frenzy, cold steel resolve. The drums of the dead began before twilight fully drowned the sky. Low thuds rolled across the snowfield, irregular yet ominously patterned. John felt them under his boots. Ghost's lips peeled from fangs. Torches flickered. Somewhere a horse screamed and was silenced by stable-hands' blades lest its terror break the cavalry lines. Snow came heavier. White dust veiled outer fires until they glowed as orange smears behind gauze. In that dim, shapes emerged, first as ripples, then as ranks. Skeleton wights in rust-gnawed mail walked in phalanx 2 abreast, shield fragments lashed with sinew. Behind them loped gaunt hounds of frost, eyes icy void. Looming tallest strode giants reanimated from the battle of the fist, their flesh fallen to cords about bone. On sledges pulled by dead elk, barrels of packed snow hissed where ghost fire flickered within. John signaled. Archers knocked. Wordless thunder as 100 arrows flew. A ragged volley but lethal. Dragonglass-tipped shafts punched through skulls, chests, hips, dead toppled, disarticulated limbs twitching. Yet the phalanx advanced. In their wake, shattered bodies scurried on hands alone, jaws snapping at snow. Pitchpots sailed, hurled by cranks of salvaged scorpions. Flames exploded across lead ranks. Black smoke rose in greasy pillars. Giants howled, flailing torches still buried in flanks, stumbling blindly toward the trench. They tumbled, driving others before them into pits spiked with dragonglass stakes. The trench ignited, a wide moat of liquid fire that incinerated those who tried to crawl free. The dead faltered. Across the snowy rise, blue-armored walkers raised mirror-bright swords. One pointed, gesture imperious. A second wave surged, bearing sledges to the fore, up the slope. As they neared the burning trench, the barrels cracked of their own accord. A pale fog rushed out, snuffing fire. The flames guttered into greenish ash that hissed and died. Cold worse than the heart of night swept across the line. Men gasped as frost blossomed on beards in seconds. "What sorcery?" Satin yelped, voice small amid the roar. Jon's teeth clacked in sudden freeze. "Ice fire," he spat. "Smother it with oil." But oil refused to light while the fog bank rolled. Whites hurled themselves into the trench, packed bodies bridging it. Others clambered across spines, bearing clattering shields overhead. Spears from the watch jabbed, but half stiffened with hoarfrost and snapped. Jon dove forward with long claw, carving a path where obsidian shattered ribs. He found himself shoulder to shoulder with Tormund, whose axe bit deep into a giant's skull, cleaving both horn and hide. The line bent, brothers fell. A walker glided through the carnage, untouched by stray blades. Jon felt its eyes on him, chill more intimate than winter. It stepped upon twitching corpses, raised its crystal blade. A war horn pealed from the south. Not the mournful note of winter's horn, but the brassy, defiant call of men. Through swirling snow thundered a column of riders cloaked in Baratheon black, gold stags emblazoned upon chests. At their head flew a fiery hart, flanked by antlers. Stannis Baratheon, late, but come. Charging up the sediment of collapsing icefall south of Castle Black, the king's cavalry hacked through the rearguard of whites harrying the trench. Behind, infantry trudged with torches dipped in wildfire green, illuminating the breach. Catapults clacked, hurling pots of pyromancer glass that burst in emerald conflagrations. The icefire fog shrieked and burned away where the two alchemies clashed. Flames sprang high enough for Night's Watchmen to see hope again. Jon seized the moment. Advance! Drive them back! He leapt the humbled trench on a slain giant's spine and waded into the press. Longclaw cracked icy vertebrae. Dragonglass dagger in his left hand pierced a child-white skull. Ghost darted within smoke, hamstringing spidery hounds. Wildlings rallied with primal screams, surging behind their lord commander. Walkers withdrew, eyes smoldering with frozen disdain. They left their puppets to hinder pursuit. But Jon did not chase far. He valued living flesh over vengeance. He called withdrawal once the dead retreated into the treeline, fires licking at their pale heels. As reinforcements crossed the trench, Jon met them. Stannis dismounted a soot-streaked destrier, black cloak swirling. Melisandre at his shoulder burned bright in riotous green glow, red hair haloed. "So it falls to you once more, bastard of Winterfell," the king said, voice rasping through ice-crusted beard. "I told you to hold. You did." "Not alone," Jon answered, wiping gore from brow. "You broke their wave." "A wave is not the sea," Melisandre warned. Her ruby glowed, pulsing like a heart beneath snow. "They will come again, stronger. The breach must be sealed with fire and faith." She lifted gaze to the shattered wall, where starlight danced in jagged facets. "The old wall is dead. We must raise a wall of burning light across the north." "How?" Jon demanded. He thought of Maester Aemon of dragons. But dragons belonged half a world away, riderless. "Lawler grants gifts to those who believe," she said. Stannis' Azor Ahai returned, his sword flames in darkness. She gestured. The king drew Lightbringer. The blade shimmered faintly red, yet snow hissed along its length. "But one sword cannot span leagues," Jon said. "We need more than faith. We need stone, steel, men. We have men." Stannis surveyed the burned field, eyes hard. They have seen victory, thin as it was. Serve them hope, and they will follow. He sheathed the blade. I march at dawn to Eastwatch. If that holdfast stands, we will gather ships, rafts, debris, anything that floats, and craft a barricade of fire upon the shivering sea. Flank the dead by water. You, Lord Commander, must hold this gate until ice melts or doom takes us. Jon exhaled vapor. I will hold. While Stannis's men quartered in the ruined stables, Jon sought the library tower, one of few structures still whole beneath its conical roof of dark slate. Sam's scrolls lined shelves in disarray, fallen during earlier tremors. Jon sifted through parchment until he found a brittle codex of legends on the Horn of Winter. The script told of Jormun's oath to blow the horn when man's pride grew taller than mountains, of subsequent pretenders, of sorcerer kings who sought it only to die in avalanches. Many claimed the horn lay buried beneath the ice of Skagos, others that it was splintered upon the fells long centuries past. Yet behold, it had sounded. Jon traced ink drawings of runic curls. They matched faintly those carved into the black horn he had glimpsed across the firing line, although his memory might deceive. He closed the book, wandering to the arrow slit. Stars clenched the sky in brittle clarity, as if they too were frozen weights. Somewhere out beyond the tree line, the horn's bearer waited. Could it be Mance Rayder? No. Mance languished in chains at Winterfell or ashes in a cage, according to rumor. Could it be some sorcerer among the cannibal clans? Or worse, could a walker itself blow the horn? The thought chilled him deeper than the night. Footsteps echoed off stone. Val slipped into the room, hair pale as the starlight, cheeks flushed from cold. She held a bundle. You should eat, she said, proffering a loaf of dense oat bread flecked with crow meat. Jon accepted, tearing a corner. Your men worship you, she said, but worship will not mend bones. Sleep. When the North sleeps, he muttered, but her concern touched him. He sank onto a reading bench and devoured the bread in 3 bites. Val crouched beside, eyes following the scroll he still clutched. What does the paper say? That horns are dangerous. He set it aside and regarded her. You have seen many kings, Val. What do you make of Stannis? A king tries to leash the wind, she answered, but the wind belongs to the world. She brushed hair from her brow. He will fight. Yet if your wall is gone, all kings amount to nothing unless they follow you. Jon laughed softly, a sound midway between mirth and grief. I am no king. You are the shield, she said. People follow shields in dark nights. He looked into her eyes and saw a reflection of a flame behind him, ghostly, wavering. He turned, and the candle on the desk guttered out though no draft stirred. In its wick glowed an ember bright as molten gold. Then it winked dead. A ripple passed through Jon's heart, like a child's hand brushing strings of a great harp. Did you feel? Val nodded, face drained. The world just breathed. Outside came silence deeper than before. The wind stilled. Distant wolves ceased their howls. Jon rose. He hurried to the slit again. The forest edge shone dim silver under aurora, but all motion had frozen. Even smoke from the burning trenches hung suspended mid-curl. Jon felt time pause. Then a sound crept into the hush. Not the drumming of dead, nor horns quake. It was faint, melodious, drifting on currents that seemed born in some heightless realm above the stars. A song, in a language Jon did not know yet recognized in Marrow. Mournful, proud, ancient beyond stone. The song of the children of the forest. Val gasped, knuckles white on windowsill. Jon pressed against the slit until stone bit cheek. Among the moonlit trees southeast, he saw glowworms of emerald flame descending the slope. Small shapes walked upright, cloaked in tangled moss, eyes amber bright. They carried slender bows strung with sinew and cord with obsidian shards. At their head fluttered pale banners of weirwood lace. The children had come. They arrived at Castle Black's ravaged gate before dawn's first rose. 24 at most, though each moved with grace of streams over stone. Brothers gaped. Wildlings whispered. Melisandre's ruby flared as if jealous. Jon met them unarmed upon the courtyard gravel, Ghost pacing at heel yet silent. Their leader was no taller than Jon's belt. Hair fall of moss, skin bark brown, eyes twin candles. It inclined head. Snowborn wolf blood. It said, voice chiming like water. Call us Leaf and Spear. Leaf and Spear, Jon echoed. He had no better courtesy. You heard the horn. We sang its forging when the night was young and stars were new, the child said. It was not meant for walkers' lips, nor men's greed. Ice forgets its bonds, so we come to mend. How? The child turned a small hand skyward. Dawn revealed gray clouds rolling from the true north, pregnant with storm. Ask the fire woman, it whispered, and the cold will answer. But first, sacrifice must seal the breach. Melisandre stepped near. Gold and green danced on her cheeks from trenches still burning. Lawler is the flame that lives in every soul, she proclaimed. He takes sacrifice gladly. What would you give? Leaf and Spear's gaze drifted to Jon. The horn sleeps in broken shards beneath the ridge where ice fell. Gather them. We will weave roots of fire through stone and raise a wall that breathes. The child's eyes flicked to Melisandre. Blood bright as ruby. That is the price. Jon felt all eyes swing to him. Brothers, wildlings, Baratheon men. His pulse thudded heavy. Whose blood? He asked. King's blood. Melisandre breathed, lashes low. Such power binds unholy magic, shapes new truth. Stannis strode forward, stoic, but hesitation knit brows. Melisandre smiled with searing surety. Gendry Waters is with the Smiths. Robert Baratheon's seed, hidden under your protection, she said to Jon. He serves with hammer. Let him serve with veins. No, Jon said at once. He is brother now. I will not trade his life. Then who will you trade? Her eyes burned. Without blood, roots shrivel. Ice wins. Leaf and Spear raised both hands. Life for life, fire for frost, it intoned. Yet choices are your own. We speak only the threads we see. Jon looked at Ghost, snow-white, red-eyed. Then at the weary men strewn behind him, each soul clinging to hope by frayed strands. A memory surfaced. Aemon's words on Dragonstone Wind, telling of Mikar's son who gave up crown for brotherhood. Duty is heavier than a mountain. And love? Jon spoke softly, but the morning heard. You'll have my blood, he said. A hush fell. Bowen Marsh half stepped forward, mouth open, yet no word came. Stannis's jaw tightened. Melisandre's smile flickered like flame starved of air. She dipped her chin. A noble offer, she said. But your death would unmake the shield we need more than a wall. Her eyes narrowed. Unless you are more than shield. The child turned to its company. They began to sing again, higher, keening. Snowflakes danced upward, reversing gravity. Jon's breath plumed azure. Pain prickled in his veins, icy cold spiraling from chest outward. He tore open jerkin, found faint blue lines spiderwebbing across sternum, where a dagger once plunged in mutiny, the mark of death undone. Melisandre reached, palm hovering over the scar. King's blood pulses in your heart too. The blood of the dragon, the wolf, the north. But your life is still bound to this war. Lawler does not demand total forfeit, only surrender for a night. Jon swallowed. I do not understand. Let me guide the knife, she said, voice almost tender. You shall die as light flickers and rise before dawn, reborn in flame. The magic we bleed will fuse horn and root and frost, forging a wall of living fire. You will breathe again, but never be quite who you were. Ghost growled low, ears flat. Jon met the direwolf's blazing eyes and felt the bond thrumming. The choice lay between his life and countless others. He turned back to the child. Will this mend the breach? If the fire woman keeps her faith, Leaf and Spear whispered. And if the northern wind allows. Jon nodded. Then do it. Ceremonies of sacrifice are seldom remembered by the world that profits from them, but the stones remember. On that night, 5th since the horn's blast, Jon Snow laid himself upon a bier of driftwood hauled from shattered barns. Melisandre painted runes across his chest. Glyphs of Valyrian first, then ancient tongue of children, then symbols she claimed burned in the hearts of all men. Around the pyre stood every living defender. Black brothers, free folk, bar. 8 Heian knights, the children, each holding a torch whose flames twisted green or gold or deep scarlet, depending on the bearer's soul. Stannis pronounced vows of witness. Tormund muttered a bawdy prayer that somehow felt truer than any sermon. Val pressed her warm hand to Jon's brow. Satin wept openly. Ghost sat beside the bier and would not be moved. Melisandre raised her obsidian dagger, 8 inches of glass carved from the same dark mine as dragonglass blades. She placed tip against Jon's sternum. "Do you, Jon Snow, lay down your life that the realm may stand?" "I do," he whispered. Breath came calm. He thought of Arya's laugh, of Bran's climbing, of Robb's camp songs, of Sansa's soft singing in Winterfell's Godswood, of a mother he could never remember. He thought of Ygritte under a roof of dripping stalactites. He thought of the wall as it once stood, white, proud. Mother, father, warrior, smith, maiden, crone, stranger, he murmured, though never fervent in the 7. "Old gods, hear me." He closed eyes. The dagger fell, a clean pierce through narrow gap between ribs. Jon gasped at icy burn. Blood welled scarlet, then turned molten gold as droplets struck rune-scrawled planks. Flames leapt, hungry. The children's song rose. Wildlings beat spears on shields. Baratheon men struck sword on metal. Melisandre chanted, "Lord of light, cast your fiery gaze upon this man, your servant, your champion, and let dawn be born anew." Heat consumed him. Pain roared like every sword wound in history. He burned body, soul, memory, until there was no Jon, only light. Ghost howled, a sound that tore ice from branches leagues away. White wind spiraled upward, mingling with scarlet sparks. The horn shards leaf and spear had gathered were cast into the heart of the blaze. Roots of weirwood sprouted where they fell, drinking flame, twisting skyward in ribbons of living wood that glowed ember-bright and wept sap ablaze like liquid sunlight. They coiled together in a lattice that grew, outward, upward, anchoring shattered ice with fused crystal and charred stone. Spark-fused glass cooled instantly to opaque obsidian streaked with red veins. From the ridge to the eastern breach, a wall of black fire rose. Not burning, yet radiating warmth so fierce snow within 50 yards melted into steaming rivers. When the pyre guttered, only ashes remained. Ghost crept among embers, sniffed, whined. The assembled defenders watched in silence. Melisandre's eyes closed. Her lips moved in prayer. Wind stirred the ashes. A breeze that smelled of pine needles and warm earth parted gray dust like curtains. At the center lay a naked man, pale steam rising from unburnt skin. His chest bore fresh scar in shape of a 7-pointed star. His hair spilled dark across char. Ghost nudged his hand. Fingers twitched. Jon Snow drew first breath as if never having known lungs before. He coughed ash, eyes fluttering. Around him gasps echoed. He stared into black sky pulsing red from the newborn wall and remembered flame devouring veins, remembered light beyond pain, and something else. A vast presence neither benevolent nor cruel, aware and ancient. It had gazed upon him as spark upon tinder, deciding. He sat up. Every nerve blazed but did not ache. He felt more, senses stretched. He could hear Bloodraven's ravens roosting in distant pines, could smell iron inside the keep's deepest well, could feel Ghost's heartbeat sync with his own. Melisandre stepped forward. "Rise, Azor Ahai," she whispered. Jon stood unsteady, accepted cloak satin threw across shoulders. He looked to the wall of black fire, towering now higher than towers, its surface a mirror reflecting no one. Deep within, shapes of red danced, embers shaped like wolves, dragons, stags. The breach was sealed. Cheers broke, ragged, disbelieving. Men embraced weeping. Women howled triumph. Leaf and spear bowed, eyes shining amber. Stannis approached, expression unreadable. "Lord Commander," he said, voice oddly reverent. "What happens now?" Jon surveyed the charred plain where snow melted into swirling mist. Beyond, the forest stirred with motion. The dead, confused, hemmed by fire they could not cross. "Now," he murmured, "we hunt." Dawn on the 6th day glistened red gold across the obsidian wall. Jon, clad again in black, but trimmed now with crimson lining at Melisandre's insistence, rode atop the ridge astride a black destrier lent by King Stannis. Tormund ambled beside on a shaggy dun mare. 1,000 ragged survivors formed escort watch, free folk, Baratheon men, banners fluttering disparate yet united. Ghost loped ahead, pale sentinel against the dark forest. The dead had fallen back beyond sight, yet brief skirmishes flared wherever straggler wights found themselves cut off from their walker masters. At the first such clash, Jon discovered new strength. Longclaw's Valyrian edge blazed dull red whenever he swung, steel hot yet unmelting. Walker ice shattered under its kiss like glass in kiln. Where a wight's claw grazed his cheek, flesh knit closed before blood could spill. Fear stirred among allies and foes alike. He felt it, tasted it on wind, but pressed it down. Eastwatch answered the raven's call. From the east, sails rose. Ramshead prows of Braavosi Selsail Stannis had hired before the Battle of the Wall, now returning to collect gold still owed. They carried casks of oil, barrels of pickled fish, crates stacked with rough-cut obsidian mined in Skagos by men who served Manderley coin. Supplies enough to feed and arm 300 warriors for a fortnight. Jon oversaw ropemakers stringing casks together, saturating them in oil, ready to be dragged across the frozen shore to flank the dead by sea. He planned harrying runs, not pitched battles. Every wight killed before its master reclaimed it was victory multiplied. Yet as tasks multiplied, letters arrived on soot-dusted wings. From Winterfell, Davos Seaworth wrote of Ramsay Bolton's treachery, of a vengeful host seeking to ride north and claim the wall's ruin for their own glory before kneeling to no one. From White Harbor, Lord Manderley begged succor against ironborn raiders emboldened by chaos. From the Vale, Lord Royce pledged knights if safe passage could be found across the neck. And from the south, Queen Regent Cersei Lannister demanded explanation. Ravens of her own spake of unnatural lights, of winter storms in summer lands, of a king gone north to war with ghosts. She threatened to recall every garrison south of Moat Cailin if Stannis did not yield Stormland's claim. Jon read each by torchlight, eyes flicking in shadow. He saw clearer than before how realms teetered. What was one sealed breach against centuries of mistrust? The living would tear themselves apart while the dead gathered again. He summoned his captains to the King's Tower. Stannis, Melisandre, Tormund, Bowen Marsh, Ser Dennis, Val. Leaf and spear perched upon an oaken stool. Flames crackled low. Wind howled beyond shutters. Jon spoke plainly. The wall stands anew, but ice deeper than any wall marches still. We cannot guard one gate while others feud. We must forge alliance. Kings and commoners, Cersei and Stannis, wildling and southern lord. Tormund snorted. You'd sooner teach a crow to lay eggs than make those blood folk hug. Ser Dennis inclined his head. Yet the Night's Watch was sworn to guard the realms of men, plural. Perhaps our Lord Commander speaks only oath. Stannis's eyes bored into Jon. You would have me make terms with the Lannister harpy? I might sooner grant her mercy with steel. Jon met his gaze unflinchingly. Steel wins battles, not wars. If we fall, southern queens will follow. He turned to Melisandre. What says your god? Does his flame show paths of peace? Her red lips curved faintly. The flames dance, my lord. They show war and peace as twin faces of the same coin. Yet I have seen a crown of snow melting upon a field of grass. I believe the coin can still be turned. Leaf and spear clicked tongue. The song of earth cries for unity. When men warred first, our forests burned. When men war again, winter will not care who wins. Jon breathed deep. Then I will go south. Not as king, not as Lord Commander, only as witness. I will show them the proof of death that walks. Stannis slammed fist to table. Folly, you are needed here. My presence here inspires hope, but hope cannot feed or arm us. Ghost will stay. My blood still warms that wolf's heart. He turned to Bowen Marsh. The Watch obeys its counsel. Ser Dennis will lead the day's defenses. Tormund will answer by night. The children will guide trenches of root fire along the new wall. Bowen Marsh swallowed. And if the dead return while you treat with queens? Lightbringer will burn in King Stannis's hand, Jon answered. And my heart will beat in Ghost's chest. He paused. I will take a single escort, ride swift, and return swifter. Stannis considered, jaw flexing. If you parley with Cersei, she may seize you. She still calls wolves traitors. Then she can kill me twice. Jon's smile held no warmth. I survived once already. Val spoke up. I will ride with him. Eyes of winter sky met his. Southrons will heed a voice they do not know. Perhaps their fear will soften before understanding. Melisandre inclined head. A woman of the free folk and a man returned from death. An unlikely pair. The flames approve. Ghost whined at doorway, as if protesting. Jon knelt, burying fingers in thick fur. Guard our brothers, he whispered. The direwolf licked his hand once, warm, living. Within 2 days, Jon and Val departed through the east gate at dawn, hooves crunching along a path cleared through fallen ice. A small column escorted them to the edge of the gift. 5 knights watch rangers upon lean Garrons, for of Stannis' knights bearing flaming heart banners, and Leaf and Spear riding a shaggy pony far too large for its frame, claiming the south must hear the forest's song with its own ears. They rode beneath the shadow of the obsidian wall, its glassy expanse reflecting sunrise in crimson bolts. Steam still vented where root fire burned within, a dragon asleep in stone. Behind, the north woke to tasks. Quarrying stone, felling pine, carving dragonglass, training new recruits. Ahead lay torn roads, treacherous passes, petty lords and great kings, betrayals and surprises none could foresee. But if they failed, if the south refused to heed, the obsidian wall would stand an island amidst oncoming storm, and every realm beyond it would drown in night without ever glimpsing dawn. Jon Snow urged his horse southward. Wind cut tear from his eye. He thought of the wall's fall, of the pyre's flame, of the cold still lurking beyond the treeline though sealed for now. 5 hours they rode before turning once more for final glimpse of home. The wall, alive, burning black, loomed like a sword driven into earth's spine. Above its crown flew crows and ravens, silhouettes against roiling gray scrim. He whispered silent promise. I will return before the last spark dies. Val rode beside, hair streaming white in morning light. She caught his glance, offered a nod, no words, only shared resolve. Leaf and Spear hummed a tune older than kingdoms. The rangers set their eyes on the bend ahead where pines grew thick. They passed within shadow, and the forest swallowed them, leaving steaming plains, obsidian wall, and gathering clouds to guard the line till destiny's next call. Behind them the horn of winter lay quiet, its shards fused into living root fire. But legends seldom rest forever. Deep under glassy ice, something stirred. A memory of cold, an echo of horn, and waited patient as the grave, for music of ruin to sound again. They reached Queen's Crown by moonrise, the wild tower half collapsed yet standing above mist-wreathed lake. Within, they found a single night's watch raven perched upon Archer's ledge, croaking the word alive whenever new footsteps climbed. Jon fed it crumbs, scrawled message on parchment torn from map. Wall sealed in fire, ride to Castle Black. The raven flew into silver dark. Val brewed pine needle broth, and the small band huddled near half-dead hearth. Jon slept briefly, dreamt of a heart beating outside his chest. Ghost stalking a field of white roses shedding blood petals. A hooded figure plucked the petals, weaving crown of thorns, whispering, North and south are one vine. When he woke, sweat chilled him though flames danced bright. Dawn smelled of thaw, an omen in midwinter. They broke camp, crossed frozen streams toward the King's Road. Jon noted how snow thinned with each mile south. The storm's reach eased beyond Wall's shadow, yet tracks of whites, deep gouges from iron-shod feet, marred drifts days old. Signs that undead outriders roamed still, scouting. At midday, Leaf and Spear dismounted, placed ear to ground. Bones whisper, it said. Death moves beneath. Moments later, the road ahead erupted. A barrow burrowed beneath by whites collapsed, disgorging skeletal claws that seized a horse's leg, dragging mount and rider into yawning pit. Knights spurred forward. Steel sang. Jon leapt from saddle, long claw blazing dull red, carving through ribs that shattered like crockery. Val loosed arrows drawn from free folk quiver, each tip obsidian. Whites crumpled, more climbed from earth. One seized Leaf and Spear, but the child drove a obsidian-chipped dagger into its brow, clouding eyes. Within minutes the pit stilled, snow-stained black ichor. They burned the corpses with lantern oil. Knights murmured prayers. Rangers cast wary gazes to woods. Jon cursed. If the dead roam this far south already, they probe for cracks in our firewall, Val said. Their masters test strength. Leaf and Spear knelt by ashes. But ground here remembers roots. We can plant seed of fire even far from wall. Need thrice-blessed blood. Jon touched fresh scar upon chest. There has been enough blood, he said. First we gather allies, then we bring seed. 2 days later they reached the last hearth. They found its gates splintered. Bolton banners fluttered above battlements. House Umber's great ironwood gate sigil lay charred. Within the hall, Ramsay Bolton presided over feast of silence. Men sprawled dead across benches, throats slit. The bastard of Bolton lounged barefoot upon Lord's seat, idle smile carved across face. He welcomed Jon with mock bow, praising the Crow King returned from Ash, proposing parley. Behind his chair, a giant skin hung flensed, a warning. Jon spoke none of courtesy. He strode to central hearth, longclaw drawn. Bolton's smile faltered. Jon threw his cloak aside, revealing chest scar still glowing faint ember red. Kneel or burn, he said. Ramsay laughed, but laughter died as flames roared up the great hearth, leaping from log to tapestries. Bolton men scrambled. Some fled. Ramsay drew blade too late. Jon's sword severed fingers, then throat. He stepped aside as the hall ignited. Leaf and Spear's song coaxed embers to root fire that danced across stone but spared Jon and his company. Flames formed archway guiding them out while Bolton's horror crackled behind. Word of last hearth's fall raced ahead of them, carried by small folk fleeing. When they reached Moat Cailin, northern banners mustered under Manderley silver, reed green, and a stark direwolf sewn anew. Lord Manderley greeted Jon with tears and pies, pledging ships to ferry men to White Harbor for the coming war. Mira Reed presented Green Dream, a weirwood heart beating beneath Red Keep, cracks showing. Jon listened, memory flaring of visions in Weirwood face. The realm's heart would crack when ice reached King's Landing. He vowed to beat it, yet with every mile south, politics thickened. Karstark grievances, Frey treachery, Ironborn raids, Martell intrigues whispered in corridors. Jon realized alliances would cost coin, promises, marriages perhaps, but none of it mattered if realm burned in blue fire. At White Harbor, sails of every coastal lord fluttered, awaiting command. Jon convened council, laying maps across salt-damp quay. He showed obsidian wall, root fire, dead's patterns. He spoke of Horn's blast, of his own death and return. Some laughed, then quietened when ghosts stepped forward, eyes red flame. Leaf and Spear sang, and the sea itself shimmered, rising in shapes of weirwood leaves. The lords pledged, some by honor, others by fear of tales true. Ravens flew to Dragonstone, to Highgarden, to Riverrun. Jon penned each letter, unite or die. He sealed with wax bearing direwolf over flaming heart, new sigil forged by fire and blood. Weeks later, outside walls of King's Landing, campfires of 5 armies flickered. Baratheon black, Tyrell green, Tully red trout, Stark direwolf, and banners unknown bearing obsidian flame. Cersei Lannister stared from Maegor's holdfast, knuckles white upon parapet, watching living host mass while rumors of dead walking reached city gates. Her lion's roar felt small. Jon rode forth in sight of gates, flanked by Val and Leaf and Spear. He carried a coffin of clear ice strapped behind saddle. Within, the severed head of a white walker, still snarling though dead. He unveiled it to golden-armored guards, its blue eyes glowing faint even severed. A hush traveled along walls. Then Jon's voice rang, "See the foe of all mankind. Choose your side." Inside the Red Keep, storms brewed. Plots, poisons, crowns. Yet even Cersei, gazing into those cold eyes through mirrored spyglass, felt dread creep. She summoned counsel, commanded no arrow loose until Parley spoke. When she finally faced Jon in throne room shadowed by melted candles, she wore black mourning though no news of Tommen's death yet reached. Jon bowed brief. Cersei's gaze flicked to Leaf and Spear, to Val. "Monsters and savages," she sneered. Jon knelt, opened coffin. Frost breathed out. Cersei's snarl faltered as blue light danced across lion-wrought floor. "Not monsters," Jon said. "Reflections. Yours, mine, ours, without warmth, without mercy." He met her eyes. "Help us or feed them. There is no third choice." And so began negotiations that would reshape the Seven Kingdoms, forging the pact of fire and ice. A union of crowns against death. But far to the north, beyond Obsidian Wall, in caverns of shattered ice, the Night King watched through eyes of ravens and dying men. He sensed the wall's flame, tasted blood that had birthed it, and turned his ancient helm toward dusk. Within his chest stirred power older than root fire, darkness longing to claim what fire dared hold. He raised the horn of winter's echo, now mere phantom within memory, and breathed wind into its silence. No sound swept, yet ice across 400 leagues shivered. The war was only begun. Word count is almost equal to 5,300. Stone arches echoed as Jon stalked the dim gallery leading to Maegor's holdfast, armored hoofbeats reverberating against pillars of green-veined marble. Candles guttered in iron sconces, shedding trembling light on piled tapestries hauled down to make way for watchposts. Gold cloaks under Ser Adam Marbrand shifted uneasily at his approach. A black wolf flanked by a wildling spear sister and a child of the forest did not pass these halls every day. Jon noted crossbows half-raised, but no man barred the path. Fear kept them obedient where loyalty failed. He paused before a set of towering weirwood doors carved in the reign of Aegon III. The charcoal-dark grain still showed faint scarlet streaks where sap oozed when the wood was fresh. Leaf and Spear bowed beneath them, whispering forgotten prayers. Val brushed a hand across the carving of a seven-headed dragon that writhed along the lintel, frowning at the southern artistry. Jon pushed and the doors yawned. Ed inward with a wheeze like old lungs. Queen Cersei Lannister waited upon a dais draped in crimson. Pillars of smoky quartz lined the chamber, each wrapped with gold serpents whose eyes glimmered black diamond. Beside her stood Qyburn and Ser Robert Strong, monster knight looming silent within his helm. To the queen's right sat Grand Maester Pycelle, lips quivering, while Septon Reynard clutched a prayer book open at dog-eared page. The Iron Throne itself lay veiled behind them under black cloth, symbolically absent from this parley. Cersei had elected a neutral setting, though nothing here felt neutral. Jon halted halfway down the carpet. The wildling banners behind him formed ragged shadows in the archway. Tormund's red bear on white, Val's spear sigil stitched hastily by southern seamstress, and the dire wolf over flaming heart he now bore. He carried no sword. Longclaw had been surrendered at the gate. Only the faint crimson glow in his scar betrayed the fire still coiled within. Cersei motioned wine-bearers forward. Jon shook his head. Val accepted only water, distrust plain. Leaf and Spear declined entirely, gaze roaming the rafters as if old ghosts perched overhead. The queen spoke first, voice molten gold. "You bring me heads and stories, tales of walking corpses, horn blasts, and impossible walls of fire. Westeros quakes with rumor thanks to your ravens. Now you appear before me demanding half my armies and the emptying of my granaries. Convince me, Lord Snow. Why should the South bleed for northern nightmares? Jon gestured. 2 squires unslung the coffin of ice. Condensed breath spiraled upward as he flipped the seal and revealed the severed walker head blinking cold, resentful blue. A hush seeped through the hall. Even Ser Robert Strong shifted his weight as that fell gaze swept across. Candle flames wavered though no draft stirred. It does not rot, Jon said. It hates the warmth. Even now it plots murder. He produced a dagger of dragonglass and stabbed the forehead. Frost spidered out, the eyes dulled, then went dark. He yanked the dagger free, wiped black ichor on white rag. That stone is dragged from beneath the wall. There are caches in Dragonstone on Skagos in the far hills. We use it to destroy their masters. But the dead are without number and they march again. Cersei's stare flicked briefly down before regaining hauteur. A trick. Some grotesquerie embalmed in wildling resin. Qyburn can preserve corpses for months. One might make a puppet's eyes glow with sham herbs. Her gaze lingered on the still form of Ser Robert as if to remind him of that art. Jon stepped closer. Your Grace, will you test it? He offered dagger hilt first. Strike its cheek. See whether green blood oozes. The magic keeping it is not ours. When she ignored him, he turned to Ser Robert. Ser, if you fear nothing, prove this false. The giant knight advanced 2 steps. Jon sensed rancid death behind that helm. He had felt its kin beyond the wall. Ser Robert extended gauntlet, gripped the dagger, and pushed it into the walker's neck. Ice shattered. The head cracked in 3, shards hissing against stone. A gust of glacial air burst outward, extinguishing 5 torches. Frost rimed Ser Robert's steel, crept up his arm. The big man recoiled, visor frosting opaque. He released the dagger with a clang and staggered back until Qyburn chanted some low susurrus and attendants rushed with braziers. Heat began to thaw the frost, but the strain in that monstrous frame remained visible. Cersei's color drained a shade. Sorcery, she whispered. She shot a look to Qyburn. The necromancer merely nodded once. Jon seized the moment. That chill will swallow every man, woman, and babe in this city if we do nothing. Already, skirmish parties crawl under your walls. We slew some by the trident. Ask your field patrols why corpses have gone missing from grave pits. He let the words hang. She rose, red silk whispering. Then what do you propose? An accord, Jon said. A grand host of the living. Each kingdom to levy 1 in 5 healthy men, 1 in 10 women if willing, funds proportional to harvest yields. Tyrell grain to feed them, Crown to arm them, North and Stormlands to supply dragonglass through Stonedrake's harbor haulage. Fleet of the Narrow Sea to ferry troops to Eastwatch. And a truce, no lord to raise blade against another until the Night King perishes. Lannister gold glinted at her throat. You require trust greater than any realm has known. Jon did not flinch. You once trusted a dwarf with wildfire. Trust me with the world. Septon Reynard cleared his throat. My queen, the faith militant could bless such an accord. If 7-sided chapels accompany every northern stockade and the wildlings kneel to the 7.
Val Stifenet, Yon lifted palm.
The old gods are not so jealous. We accept any blessings that keep swords sharp. But no man shall be forced to kneel for prayers. An hour of wrangling ensued, Pycelle wheezing caution over coin, Qyburn proposing plague wards, Cersei bargaining hostages for guarantees. Jon conceded a royal tribunal to oversee resources, equal votes by each kingdom. He offered Sansa Stark as liaison, knowing she would relish political webs, Davos as neutral quartermaster. Finally, the queen demanded Tormund's son Torgon as good faith ward. Jon refused but proffered 2 Karstark cousins, knowing they sought southern adventure. At length, Cersei's shoulders eased fractionally. Very well. By morning I shall draft letters to Lord Paramounts. But mark me, Snow. Betray this pact and the lion will feed on wolf. The dead will feed on lion first, Jon replied. He bowed. withdrew. Outside, thunder cracked though skies were clear. Val breathed in relief. "We have a lion in the pack." Leaf and Spear cocked head, listening beyond hearing. "5 stars just died," it murmured. "Ominous." 3 days later, ravens sped to every corner of Westeros. On parchment sealed with lion and wolf they commanded musters. Reach men to Highgarden, Riverland levies to Harrenhal, Dornish spears to Storm's End. The Vale to gather at Moat Cailin by Aery-sponsored route along eastern coast. Ironborn to provide longships or be declared enemies of life. Across the islands, House Harlaw complied, House Greyjoy defied. The message reached Winterfell, whose chambers now housed Lady Sansa, Maester Wolkan, and a creche of orphaned Karstark children. Sansa read the letter, bit her lip, and began drafting supply logs. Jon departed King's Landing before the ink dried, riding for Dragonstone with Val and a freshly liberated Tyrion Lannister who sought atonement. The imp had been smuggled out of dungeons by Varys after overhearing talk of Jon's quest. He offered knowledge of tunnels beneath Red Keep where Walker spies might lurk, and of wildfire stores still hidden. Jon accepted but bade him swear to the pact. Tyrion drank deeply, spat, and swore. They reached Dragonstone aboard a Braavosi caravel named White Widow. The sea frothed iron under moonlight as the spired fortress loomed, gargoyles stark against stars. At the stone stairs Jon was greeted by Lady Shireen in velvet gloves, flanked by Ser Davos. Stannis' daughter pressed a book to her chest, The Dance of Dragons, and spoke shyly of Valyrian powers. Jon knelt, kissed her gray-scaled fingers without fear. Beneath the castle they toured mine tunnels where obsidian rings glimmered in lantern light. Dwarves and crown engineers chipped shards to send north. In a great slag hall Davos unfolded new reports. Cell sails from Pentos bearing Daenerys Targaryen had landed on Slaver's Bay again after sack of Yunkai. Her dragons grew thrice pony-sized. Rumor said she eyed Westeros still. Jon wondered if dragons might tip the war. Val doubted. One woman's fire cannot melt a world of ice alone. Yet Jon asked Davos to dispatch envoys to Meereen with maps of White Walker invasion, promising safe landing at Dorne. Davos agreed, heart hopeful. Word arrived that Euron Greyjoy's fleet had sacked Fair Isle and taken prisoners for blood sacrifice. His priests muttered of a kraken god rising to drown both fire and ice. Jon contemplated sending ships west, but numbers were thin. He tasked Tyrion with brokering Lords of Arbor and Old Town to reinforce navy. The dwarf accepted with relish, sailing off aboard Red Hand. Across the realm levies marched. Highgarden spearmen under Lord Mace, Knights of the Rose decked in pink ribbons. Slim Dornish outriders led by Lady Ariana, cheeks sun-kissed but eyes like whetted steel. Rank upon rank of Manderly Marines, banners of white mermen dancing. The Vale soared down mountain passes, led by Lord Yon Royce in heavy bronze. To many it seemed as if banners from Blackfire rebellions had come alive again, only their enemy now lay north of Sense. But unity faltered at Riverrun, where Edmure Tully balked at Karstark contingent still wearing Bolton-flayed cape remnants. Blades nearly drawn, until Jon intervened by Raven, reminding them that a man's cloak did not bar his heart from the fight. He invoked the Pact's first clause, "We stand as one living host." Edmure relented and hosted Karstarks at dinner, though prayer before meal trembled. While armies rallied, Jon returned to the wall, arriving astride a sand steed 2 months after leaving. The obsidian barrier glowed still, but cracks spidered across black glass. Root fire flickered, fed by barrels dredged daily. The children and builders sang to mend fissures. Stannis patrolled parapets, Lightbringer bright. Yet new threats probed. Ice spiders as large as warhorses climbed by night, spinning webs that smothered torches. White ravens dive-bombed stores of oil, splashing it across wood to dampen flames. Jon organized archers with flint arrows to shoot them mid-air. He toured ramparts. Ser Dennis reporting casualties light but morale strained. Dolorous Ed recounting jestful laments about Spider's eightfold hunger. Jon commended them, then convened council in ruined Lord Commander Solar. Maps now bristled with colored pins marking allied columns inching north. The plan: Moat Cailin to become Grand Camp, staging arms and dragonglass for each host. From there waves would shuttle by ship up the White Knife to Eastwatch, then march along New Wall to relieve Castle Black. Meanwhile, Baratheon fleet would engage any undead forces along Shivering Sea. Night fell. Jon sought the grove where he had died. Smoke drifted above cinder-scarred soil. Leaf and Spear sat cross-legged, eyes shuttered. Ghost prowled perimeter. Jon seated opposite. "The wall weakens," he said. "The horn's shards still hum," the child replied, "but dark breaths gather.
Roadfira Kravasap.
Life must feed life." Jon clenched fists. "No more human blood." Leaf and Spear jutted chin toward mountains. "There is dragon blood, or giant blood, or blood of the Seastone singers who remember older songs than ours. Balance must be paid." "Then we find another way," Jon said. "Dragons, maybe. They can spare a scale or tear." He rose, determined. That midnight, ravens shrieked across star-littered sky. Jon followed their flight to East Rampart and saw a distant orange flicker on horizon. Eastwatch aflame. Snow thundered as half-collapsed ice cliffs calved. The White Knife's mouth churned with shattered hulls. Panic threatened until runners arrived. Not the dead, but Euron Greyjoy. With black sails he had raided Eastwatch, slaying sailors, stealing obsidian cargo, then fleeing north into fog. Euron had bound his ships in runes learned from Carcosa, resisting shardfire. Stannis stormed. Jon brooded.
Valspat Curses.
The child of the forest plucked a burnt feather from fallen raven and murmured, "The kraken stirs the storm to drown the flame." Euron's theft imperiled the pact. Without those crates, half the carrot supply of dragonglass was lost. Jon dispatched galleys in pursuit, but storms masked the raiders. He then devised new plan. Mine obsidian at Dragonstone faster, smelt chips into arrowheads. But forging dragonglass into armor proved brittle. Gendry, now Master Smith, experimented with steel obsidian composite, layering glass veins inside Valyrian steel mold by quenching in ice water from walls melt. After weeks, he forged prototype spear that glowed sunset within. Jon tested it on captive White. The spearhead pierced skull and survived intact. Production began day and night. As spring's first whispers kissed the south, the grand host marched. Across neck causeways, columns 5 miles long trudged under banners of rose and sunspear, falcon and trout, wolf and lion. Jon rode at vanguard, ghost ranging ahead. He felt the ground hum with unity. Yet overhead, clouds swirling bruise-purple signaled the north would not accept spring so easily. At Moat Cailin, the host encamped in concentric rings of palisades.
Beryl Fires flickert, Stu Cauldrons babbelt. Lords convent war concils in Moss-Eaton Towers.
Jon stood before them. Mace Tyrell plump in enameled armor, Jon Royce in bronze scales, Doran Martell enthroned upon cushioned litter, Sansa Stark radiant in winter ermine. Even Cersei's proxy Ser Adam armed and armored. Discussion turned to command. Many expected Stannis, others Mace as richest, some Jon for neutrality. Jon listened, then rose. "No single lord commands this war," he said. "The army of the living commands itself by counsel. Each host guards the flanks of the next. When battle joins, the line will break if pride fractures it." He outlined layered formation. Dornish light cavalry sweeping White outriders. Vale heavy infantry anchoring center. Reach longbowmen providing volley arcs. Northmen and wildlings spearheading dragonglass charge. Ironborn defectors manning flank ships. Crown and Riverland detachments forming reserves. Tyrion, newly returned, added cunning. Trenches lined with wildfire to channel dead into kill lanes. Scorpion ballistae rigged with mirror lenses to focus root fire beams. Trebuchets launching barrels of salt and iron shards consecrated by septons and children together. Lords grumbled, but none produced better. The plan ratified. On eve of departure, Jon visited Sansa in a candlelit tower. She unfolded ledgers of grain, showing shipments on teal parchments. Her eyes shone with quiet resolve. They spoke of their father, of Arya's last letter from Braavos, no word in months, of Bran rumored haunting Weirwood nets beyond our understanding. Jon clasped her hand and promised to shield the realm so she could rebuild it. Frost returned the next week. Skies darkened, snow driving horizontal. Reports poured in. Skeleton scouts seen at last river. Flayed corpses nailed at widow's watch with runes carved into bone. A giant heart frozen to ruby outside Carhold. The Night King announced himself. The army of the living advanced along the King's Road north. Drifts waist-deep, they marched regardless, shovels clearing path for wagons. On third night, they reached Greywater Watch. No tower stood, only misty bog. Reed guides directed them along floating log trails. Spirits of the swamp howled but did not attack. Some claimed the Crannogmen sang songs that lulled whites to rest. At dawn, outriders returned breathless. A column of ice giants approached from east, 20 tall as towers, each bearing trees for clubs. Jon ordered Vale Knights to anchor ridge, Tyrell archers to fell giants' legs. Meanwhile, children unleashed root-fire serpents that coiled up trunks and detonated. Giants crashed, scattering white escorts. Yet one behemoth, its skull crowned in ice crystals, survived arrows and fire alike, rampaging into Tyrell lines. Lord Loras led charge on horseback, slashing tendon with Valyrian steel bright rose. The giant toppled, but its last swing crushed Loras beneath Oak Club. Mace Tyrell wept but held formation, earning new respect. Further north, near Queen's Crown, the host encountered unnatural storm. Lightning blue as corpse fire, snowflakes sharp as glass. Men froze mid-stride, flesh glazed, shattering when struck. Jon consulted Melisandre via mirrored glass. She rode with Stannis behind. The Red Woman advised forging a wall of light. Thousands of torches soaked in oil, lit simultaneously. They arrayed in half-circle. At Jon's signal, thousands of flints sparked. A sheet of flame burst, melting hail into steam. Storm parted enough for advance. But delays proved costly. By the time they reached the gift, the Night King's army had amassed beyond the obsidian wall, now numbering tens of thousands. Dead wildlings, free folk, free companies slain by Euron then turned. Bears encased in ice, giants revived. The black wall's cracks widened. Root fire flickered low. Jon convened final council at Molestown's abandoned inn. Stannis there, stern. Cersei present via Tyrion bearing her ring and orders. Mance Rayder, freed by Davos from Winterfell dungeons, offering knowledge of northern terrain. Asha Greyjoy representing repentant Ironborn. Davos, Tormund, Val, Leaf and Spear, and Sansa. They laid stones for each host on map and debated. Mance proposed guerrilla tactics. Lure whites into forests, burn, retreat. Stannis insisted on field engagement to protect wall builders. Cersei's missive demanded minimal Lannister losses until threat proven. Jon listened, then spoke. "We fight tomorrow," he said, "on the Frostfang plain south of the wall. The Night King will come to break our shield before reinforcements from Dragonstone arrive. We must bait him into committing his walkers, then shatter them." "How?" Sansa asked. Jon drew rune lines. "Here, along ridge, we place scorpions with sun mirror lenses. Dragons would be better, but lacking them, concentrate root fire through glass to Lancewalker ranks. Meanwhile, spearmen with dragon glass will seal breaches. Stannis and Lightbringer strike the Night King once separated." Tormund grinned. "A hunt." Leaf and Spear eyed the plan. "Beware. The Night King carries shards of the horn. He may unmake root fire where he treads." "That's why I face him," Jon said. "Fire within me will contend." Melisandre approved. "Azor Ahai must fight darkness himself." Sansa touched his sleeve, fear plain, but nodded. That night, Jon walked alone to the obsidian wall's base. He placed his palm on glass warm as living skin, yet cracks pulsed faint blue. He whispered vow, "Hold one day more." Ghost howled. Distant wolves answered. Dawn broke leaden and bleak. The army of the living formed ranks atop Frostfang Plain. Snow churned beneath boots, banners snapping. Earthworks dotted ridge, trenches lined with wildfire pots. Scorpions angled mirrors heavenward, veins of glass shimmering. Dragonglass shields gleamed black rainbow. Knights prayed, wildlings spat, Dornish sang low tune of water gardens. Across frozen valleys stretched the army of the dead. A low horn moaned, not of living lungs but of air-bothering bone. Ranks of wights parted. The Night King rode forth upon undead wyvern, its flesh strips fluttering. Behind him strode 18 white walkers, each clad in armor of rime, some carrying spears of pale fire, others swords thin as sorrow. Jon, mounted on shaggy winter gelding, raised his spear gendry forged. Flames rippled along core lines. Stannis at his left hefted Lightbringer, fiery, Melisandre chanting. Thou not far, bow drawn. Leaf and spear perched atop scorpion frame, ready to sing to mirrors. The Night King lifted a hand. Silence swallowed wind. Then he clenched fist. Earth cracked. From beneath snow surged skeletal hands. The buried giants from Hardhome, long lost, heaving up torsos huge as siege towers. They roared without lungs and charged, trampling wights in blind run. Jon signaled. Scorpions fired. Beams of focused root fire seared holes through giant skulls. 2 crashed, but others barreled on. Vale infantry met them with pikes tipped obsidian. Shafts splintered. A giant's club smashed bronze line. Royce shouted, "Hold, men of the Vale!" and planted banner in snow. Archers volleyed flaming arrows into eye sockets, finally toppling brute. Center lines collided, iron against bone. Obsidian cracked into ribs. Fire bursts from dragonglass shards glowed. But wights climbed over each other, heedless. Tyrell longbows sang, cutting swaths through throngs. Dornish spears darted, slashing ankles before retreating under shields. Jon saw the Night King glide above battlefield, searching. He spurred mount, cutting path through wights. Stannis followed, Lightbringer blazing path. They reached clearing near ridge where mirror scorpions lay smashed by ice spider assault. Lightning blue forked from sky, striking root fire caches, quenching them. Night King descended, dismounting with silent grace. His sword, dark crystal, dripped freezing mist. Jon dismounted, spear leveled. "Remember me," he called. Blue eyes flickered. Night King advanced. They met with clash. Spear versus blade. Jon's composite weapon rang, sparks red and blue. Each stroke numbed his arms with cold. Stannis circled, lashing Lightbringer, but a walker intercepted, parried with frost spear. Flames sputtered. Above, Val loosed arrow after arrow at walkers, each obsidian-tipped shaft shattering foes. She felled 2 before an ice lance pierced her shoulder. She rolled, grim but alive. Leaf and spears singing raised tremor. Roots ripped from snow, ensnaring wights, yet walkers severed vines with ease. Night King pressed Jon, blow after blow. Spear cracked. Jon parried with longclaw drawn from back scabbard. Valyrian steel clashed crystal, sending ringing shockwaves. Jon felt scar flare, blood heating blade red. The Night King's eyes narrowed. He raised empty hand, and shards of ice from air darted at Jon like daggers. Jon rolled, but one pierced thigh. Pain scorched. He staggered. A giant wight lumbered near, club raised to squash Jon. Suddenly it lurched, roaring. Ghost latched onto its hamstring, tearing fibrous tissue. The beast fell. Ghost danced aside. Jon sprinted, climbed the fallen giant's arm, launching himself at Night King. Longclaw overhead, he screamed. Descending, the Night King caught the blade barehanded. Frost raced down steel. Crimson glow dimmed. Jon gasped as ice crawled his arm. Night King's mouth opened, the first time, to exhale plume so cold the air rang. Jon's lungs froze. Then a horn note sounded, not mournful collapse but vibrant call. From western hill galloped a dragon. Black scales, wings night red, rider silver-haired. Daenerys Targaryen atop Drogon dove, fire gushing brilliant gold. Flames slammed into Night King, forcing him back, melting snow into rivers. Walkers shrieked, armor pooling. Drogon landed, crushing wights under claws. Daenerys leapt, Dothraki Arak in hand. Jon stared, stunned. She nodded. "You called for dragons. I have 3. Above, Regal and Viserion circled. unleashing torrents of emerald and frost-blue flame. Viserion had matured pale. Walls of fire isolated swaths of dead. Men cheered, reinvigorated. Giants faltered, burning. Night King rose from char but cloak smoked. He raised sword, aimed at Viserion. Spear of ice materialized, hurled skyward. Drogon banked, shielding sibling. Spear struck scales, glanced off. Daenerys brandished whip of dragonglass links, striking ground. Flames launched at Night King again as Jon lunged with Longclaw. This time blade bit into crystal armor, cracking it. Night King reeled, eyes widening. Stannis, freed from Walker Duel by Tyrell pikemen, thrust Lightbringer into Night King's exposed side. Red fire met abyssal cold. The clash birthed shockwave. Snow evaporated into steam. Night King screeched, a sound of ice fracturing. He swung sword in last arc, severing Lightbringer halfway. Weapon dimmed. Stannis fell, beard freezing. Jon grasped broken blade still glowing at hilt. He jammed it deeper into crack. Daenerys wrapped chain whip around Night King's neck, pulling tight. Ghost leapt, jaw-locking ankle. Leaf and spear sang piercing note. Roots of weirwood burst from soil, coiling Night King's arms. Jon ripped the horn shard from his belt, the one Melisandre retrieved from Pyre, smoldering with root fire veins. He slammed it into open chest fissure. Night King stiffened. Blue eyes flared bright, then shattered like glass sculptures splintered by hammer. Explosion of ice motes burst outward. Jon shielded Daenerys with body. Frost stung, but heat from his scar melted shards. Silence after the scream stretched. Across plain, walkers collapsed to dust. Whites toppled, lifeless. Dragons roared triumphant. Men cheered, cry rising to heavens. The dead host lay still. Jon knelt beside Stannis. The king gasped, alive. Lightbringer's stump glowed faint. "It is done," Jon said. Stannis gripped Jon's arm, respect at last. Daenerys regarded Jon. Sweat streaked soot on her cheeks, eyes glittering. "Seems the song of ice and fire requires duet," she said. Jon chuckled hoarsely. "A chorus, it appears." He looked across battlefield at gathered men. North, south, free folk, children, dragons, wolves, united. "We will sing it together." Leaf and spear approached, placing small hand upon melting horn fragment now dull stone. "Balance restored," it murmured. "But songs go on. Keep root fire burning. Keep hearts beating." Val joined, sling arm bandaged. She gazed at Daenerys warily yet nodded. "Your fire is welcome, Dragon Queen. The North is not ungrateful." Drogon rumbled assent. Later, fires burned to cremate corpses free from sorcery. Sansa rode through lines, tears and smiles alike. Tyrion set about drafting new charters for United Realm. Cersei, upon hearing victory and the Dragon Queen's arrival, prepared new plots but found them tempered by awe. The obsidian wall still stood, cracks sealing as weirwood roots spread. With Night King dead, winter storms eased. Sun glimpsed blue sky, yet Jon knew seasons turned slow. He met Daenerys atop wall to discuss next steps. They spoke of broken kingdoms, of feeding small folk, of iron forges and dragon glass roads. They spoke of children of forest seeking new groves and of Tormund wanting to carve himself a song. Jon placed hand on turrets. Warmth pulsed through veins, answered by faint heartbeat in black glass. He realized the wall lived now, a guardian forged of old gods and new. Its flame flickered inside him too. Daenerys asked about ruling. Jon sighed. "I have no crown," he said. She smiled. "Crowns are heavy. Perhaps we share the weight." He thought of Aemon's wisdom. Love is duty's death, but duty can be love. He met her eyes. Somewhere south, flowers budded in slush. For now, though, dead must be buried, living nursed. Jon descended to Field Hospital where Gendry hammered spearheads, where sisters tended wounds, where wildlings exchanged jokes with Lannister veterans. He lifted water to soldiers' lips, tied bandages, listened to their tales. Night fell calm, stars bright. Jon sat by fire with Ghost's head on knee. Leaf and spear strummed bone flute, a melody of dawn. Dragons slept curled around roots of wall, wings blanketing scorched snow. Tomorrow councils would haggle coin and castles. But tonight, humanity breathed as one. Jon gazed at flame. Within he saw his scar, still glowing faint, and understood he would carry both fire and ice always. He whispered prayer to gods old and new, to Lawler, to unnamed watchers. He thanked them for 5,000 years of night now lifted. And somewhere deep in mountains, something else listened, earth shifting, magma flowing, perhaps another threat for another age. But that was not today. Today, the living had won. Word count is almost equal to 5,600.